I'm Anastasia Chatzka. I'm a fashion designer, pattern maker, and sewing educator, and I'm so happy you're here sewing along with me today. Welcome to Sew Anastasia, and today I'm going to show you how to sew a double welt pocket with only 2 pieces of fabric. And this is going to be so easy that you're going to put double welt pockets on everything. I know double welt pockets seem really intimidating, they seem hard to do, it's hard to keep all the little lines straight, but we are going to go over this and make a super easy double welt pocket, and you're going to want to put them on everything. If you're not already a subscriber to Sew Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, I'm now teaching sewing classes in my design studio in Chicago, Illinois, and virtually, so check those out at sewanastasia.com. Supplies for creating a double welt pocket are super simple. You're going to need a marking tool, you're going to need your ruler, you're also going to need just a little bit of fusible interfacing, and then you're going to need some fabric to sew your welt pocket out of. So you just need a little bit for a pocket bag, and then enough to do the little double welt, which is going to be about 3 inches by 7 inches wide. You're also going to need a project to sew your double welt pocket on, but maybe you want to practice first in some muslin. I'm going to be using muslin today to go over how to make this double welt pocket sample. The welt pocket can go anywhere you want a pocket. You've definitely seen it on sport coats, you've definitely seen it on jackets and in skirts and on the back of pants. Double welt pockets are everywhere. You can even create them with a flap sticking out of them, and then you can put the flap inside the pocket, or you can pull the flap out. There are a lot of options for double welt pockets, but today we're going to be doing a double welt pocket with no flap. So you can make your pocket as big as you want or as small as you want. I'm going to be making a pocket today with a 6-inch opening, which means the length of my fabric is going to be 7 inches. So I'm going to be making a welt that is 3 inches wide and 7 inches long, and I'm going to be making a pocket bag that is 10 inches long and 7 inches wide. So I've traced out my double welt piece of fabric, and I've also traced out my pocket bag here. So now I can go ahead and cut them out. Now that you have your fabrics cut out, you need to cut out some interfacing. You're going to cut 2 pieces of interfacing the exact same size as your double welt fabric piece. So you should have all your pieces cut out now. You're going to have your pocket bag, which is going to be the piece of fabric that holds all your little goodies in your pocket inside of the pocket here. The double welt is going to end up turning into these little flaps of fabric on the outside of the opening of the pocket. And then we have 2 pieces of interfacing the same size as the double welt. And we're going to have a piece of fabric here that I'm going to be sewing my pocket to. Achieving a great welt pocket also requires a lot of really great ironing, but the first few ironing steps are super simple. We're just going to be applying some fusible interfacing. So come on down, check it out, and let's go over where to put that interfacing. You always want to make sure you have a piece of muslin on your board so you don't get interfacing on it. Now you want to take your double welt and flip it so the right side is down. We're going to put some fusible on the wrong side of it. So go ahead and make sure the dots of your interfacing are face down. Go ahead and grab another piece of muslin, place it on top, and fuse it. You always want to make sure you put a piece of fabric on top of your interfacing as well, because you don't want to get the glue on the bottom of your iron. So now if we lift that up, we have our double welt fused with some interfacing. So now we can set that one aside. And now what we need to do is take our project, so this rectangle right here is going to be my project that's getting the double welt, and we want to place another piece of interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric where your double welt's going to go. My double welt's going to go up here, so I'm going to be placing my interfacing here with the glue side to the wrong side of the fabric. Grab another piece of muslin, lay it on top, and fuse it down. Okay, so now we should have a piece of fusing on your project on the wrong side, a piece of fusing on your double welt, and then we have our pocket bag. So these are all the pieces that you should have right now, so that way you can create the double welt. Now what you need to do is figure out exactly where you want that pocket opening to be, and we're gonna trace out our double welt so that way we can sew it. Now what you need to do is take your project and put it face up. And don't forget exactly where your interfacing is, because that is where we're going to be putting our double welt. And take the right side of your double welt fabric and put it face down. Now I lined mine up with the interfacing on the back, so that way I know exactly where it's going to go. Now what we need to do is draw our pocket opening. So our pocket opening is going to be a 1/2 inch wide, and it's going to be 6 inches long. So we are going to draw that on this piece of welt fabric here, and we're gonna put it right in the center. Now what we're gonna do is put a straight stitch right where my pink chalk is. We're just gonna outline this pink rectangle with a straight stitch. So now we're just gonna sew all the way around that chalk line that we have there. Cut, and we're done with that part. Now that we have our rectangle all sewn up, we want to draw a line right down the center of it. So that would be a 1/4 inch in all the way down. And now what we want to do is draw some triangles coming out about a 1/2 inch on each end. These are going to end up being our cut lines for the corners. So we're going to end up cutting the triangle, cutting down the center, and then cutting this triangle here. The easiest way to get this started is fold it. Give it just a little clip so you can get in there with your scissors. And now work your way down. And if you have an X-Acto blade, you can also use an X-Acto blade for this step. Now it's important that you follow the exact line, because this is gonna act as a template for our double welt in a minute. And when you're cutting, you have to go all the way to that stitch line. Make sure you don't cut through your stitch, but you wanna make sure you're going all the way to the corner, because if you don't, your double welt is not going to lay flat. Now I'm gonna go down the other side. When I get to the tip of that triangle, I'm just going to cut to the corner, come back, and cut to the other corner. So now it should look like this. You should have an opening, and you should have these little triangles at the end. Now that we have everything cut, we need to go iron our double welts in. And this part is so important, so make sure you pay careful attention to exactly how I'm ironing. The first step is pushing over the fabric and ironing it nice and flat on this side. And now I want you to take the other side. Ooh, it's hot. Push it over. We are gonna iron this side. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our double welt and flip it to the back of our project. So now we have the back of our project here. At this point, you really want to make sure that your corners are laying nice and flat. I like to give them a little press at this point just to make sure they're going to be nice and clean as I continue the journey here of this double welt pocket. Not a bad idea to take a look at it on the front. Make sure your corners are laying nice and flat. There's no pulling, there's no bunching. And if there is, you need to clip just a little further. Okay, so now what we need to do is wrap our extra fabric here around this 1/4 inch little seam allowance here. And this is gonna become our double welt. So we have 2 parts of the double welt. This is welt number 1. So we are going to wrap it around that edge and iron. That's why it's really important that you cut this evenly, because this is acting as our template for the welt. And now you can iron this. We're gonna flip it around and do the same thing to the other side. So make sure you are wrapping the edge of the fabric right around that seam allowance, that 1/4 inch. Make sure nothing is bunching funny at the ends. Make sure it's all laying nice and flat. Now, if you've done this correctly, these two are going to meet in the center. There's no gap in between them at all. They perfectly align. Okay, let's turn it over to the front and take a look at it. Woo, it's hot. So it looks like my welt right here came a little big on that side, so I can just pull that back and give it a re-iron. The corners are always the trickiest. Sometimes you need to go back and just work them a little bit. Maybe pull one side down or up to make sure that they're even. You can also flip back the sides and give it a little pull and adjust it there, and then iron it from that side. Okay, we are looking really good for sewing for our next step. We're back at the sewing table and we are ready to finish this double welt pocket. So one of our last steps is going to be a stitch in the ditch right here on the bottom of the welt and then on the top of this welt here. This is just going to keep it in place. I really like adding this little step. If you're not familiar with what a stitch in the ditch is, it literally means I'm going to be stitching in this seam here. So I'm going to try and make my stitch invisible by stitching in this seam. So I put my stitch in the ditch foot on, but you can also just do this with a regular foot. So just be careful where you're sewing and watch the seam that's there so that way you can stitch right into it. Now I'm using a contrasting thread so that way it's easy for you to see what I'm doing. When you get to the end, you can back stitch or fix and cut. Now I'm going to turn it around and do the exact same thing to the other side. I like to put my needle down, make sure I'm in the seam for setting it up. Go ahead and lower my foot. I'm going to be using the fix button and then I'm going to continue all the way down my pocket. When you get to the very end, fix or back stitch and cut. So let's take a look at the stitch in the ditch here. It is right in that seam and you can see it because I use contrasting thread. If you use matching thread on your project, you would never know that this stitch is here and it's holding our welts in place. So we've got our double welt here. And now if we flip it over to the back, we can see exactly what that looks like as well. And now it's time to put the pocket bag on. Stitching on the pocket bag is super easy. So now what we need to do is take it and sew it right here at the very top of the welt. And then we're going to take the other side, pull this back, and make sure you're stitching the right side of the fabric of the welt to the right side of the pocket bag. We're just going to stitch all the way across here. So we need to do those 2 stitches first, and then I'll show you the magic of sewing up the side and making sure you catch these little triangles in your seam allowance. So let's sew down the first part of this pocket. Don't forget to back stitch or fix at the beginning. And now we are going to flip it and sew the other side of the pocket bag. Back stitch at the end and cut. Next, we're going to sew up the sides of the pocket bag. Now this sounds easy, but it's really tricky because you have to catch those little triangles in there. So in order to do this, I like to put on the zipper foot. So go ahead and connect your zipper foot on the left-hand side of your multi-purpose zipper foot. We're going to take a look real quick at what we've done so far. So we have our double welts, we have our stitch in the ditch, we have the pocket bag sewn onto the back here, but we have these big holes here, so we have to sew those down. So if we take this and flip this back, you can see there's that little triangle. It's sticking out, which is great. That's exactly where we want it. So if I turn this to the front of the pocket, make sure your pocket bag is going the direction you need it. Flip back your project. And now you can see exactly where we need to sew. We need to sew from the bottom of the pocket bag all the way up to these welts. And it's really important that you sew over this triangle right next to the stitch that's already there. This is a stitch that we created originally when we sewed that rectangle. Now, if you don't catch this in here, you are gonna have a hole in your double welt pocket. And then just continue all the way up, back stitch, and that's how you sew the side of the double welt pocket. Let's go sew that up, and we're gonna do the same thing to both sides. Okay, so let's sew up the side seams of this pocket. Don't forget to back stitch. And then continue your way all the way up the pocket, and don't let it get stuck in your zipper foot. Make sure you don't pull this out of whack while you're sewing up the side as well. Also be careful not to catch your project in it. Okay, so here's where we have to be really careful to make sure not to catch your project, but make sure that we're catching this line of stitching right here by the triangle. Back stitch and cut. For this next side, I'm going to start from the top of my pocket and work my way down. And I really want you to pay attention to where that triangle is and where I'm stitching. So I am right next to it. And I need to make sure I'm not catching my project in there, and then just come all the way down the pocket. Back stitch at the end and cut. We have finished our double welt pocket, so let's take a look at the sides and check out our pocket. So you can see the line of stitching that I've done here. It starts at the top, goes right over that triangle, goes over those folds that I created for the double welt, and then comes right down the pocket bag. It was that simple. And look how awesome our double welt pocket looks. We have a double welt pocket, and that was so easy. So next time you're sewing something and you want to put a double welt pocket on it, or maybe the pattern suggests putting a double welt pocket on it, don't freak out. Don't be scared. Don't think you're going to ruin your project. It's super easy and simple if you just follow all these steps for creating your double welt pocket. Thank you so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. If you have any questions on this pocket, leave it down below and I will get back with you as soon as I can. And make sure you follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all those social media websites so we can stay connected and creative together. And don't forget to follow me on YouTube and make sure you hit that notification bell because I put out new sewing videos every single week and more than one of them. So much sewing content. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.